Finn, a golden retriever with a coat that shimmered like honey in the sunlight, had always been the epitome of loyalty and joy. His owner, Ethan, a 32-year-old freelance writer, had adopted him from a shelter 5 years ago. Since then, Finn had been Ethan's constant companion, his shadow, his confidant. They had shared countless adventures, from hiking in the Rockies to lazy afternoons in the park. But now they were embarking on a new chapter in their lives, moving into a new house. The house was a charming Victorian-style home nestled in the quiet town of Willow Creek. It was a fixer-upper with a sprawling backyard and a wraparound porch that Ethan envisioned as the perfect spot for his morning coffee. The real estate agent had mentioned that the house had been vacant for a few years, but Ethan didn't think much of it. He was more concerned with the leaky faucet in the kitchen and the creaky floorboards in the hallway. Finn, however, seemed less than thrilled about the move. As soon as they stepped through the front door, Finn's tail, which usually wagged with uncontainable excitement, drooped low. His ears flattened against his head, and he let out a low whine that Ethan had never heard before. "Come on, buddy, it's not so bad," Ethan said, trying to coax Finn further into the house. But Finn remained rooted to the spot, his eyes darting around the room as if he were seeing something Ethan couldn't. Ethan shrugged it off, attributing Finn's behavior to the stress of the move. He spent the rest of the day unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and trying to make the house feel like home. Finn, on the other hand, stayed close to Ethan's side, his body tense, his eyes constantly scanning the room. That night, as Ethan lay in bed, he heard Finn pacing back and forth in the hallway. The sound of his nails clicking against the hardwood floor was unnerving, but Ethan chalked it up to Finn adjusting to the new environment. He called out to Finn, who reluctantly came into the bedroom and lay down at the foot of the bed. But even as Finn settled down, Ethan could feel the tension in the air, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Chapter 2. The Whispers. The next few days were a blur of unpacking and settling in. Ethan was determined to make the house feel like home, but Finn's behavior only grew more erratic. He would bark at seemingly nothing, his hackles raised, his eyes wide with fear. He refused to go into certain rooms, especially the basement, which Ethan had yet to explore. And at night, Finn would pace the hallway, his low whines keeping Ethan awake. One evening, as Ethan sat at his desk trying to work, he heard Finn growling softly from the living room. He got up to investigate and found Finn standing in the middle of the room, his body rigid, his eyes fixed on the far wall. Ethan followed Finn's gaze but saw nothing out of the ordinary. "Finn, what is it, boy?" Ethan asked, crouching down to comfort him. But Finn didn't respond. His growls grew louder, more menacing, and then, without warning, he lunged at the wall, barking furiously. Ethan was startled. He had never seen Finn act like this before. He tried to calm him down, but Finn was inconsolable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Finn stopped barking and retreated to Ethan's side, his body trembling. Ethan was at a loss. He had no idea what had spooked Finn, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the house. That night, as he lay in bed, he heard it. A faint whisper, so soft that he almost thought he had imagined it. He sat up, straining to hear, but the sound was gone. The next morning, Ethan decided to explore the basement. He had been putting it off, but he felt compelled to see if there was something down there that could explain Finn's behavior. He grabbed a flashlight and made his way down the creaky stairs, Finn trailing reluctantly behind him. The basement was damp and musty, with a low ceiling and walls lined with shelves filled with old, dusty boxes. Ethan shone the flashlight around the room, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. Just as he was about to give up, he noticed a small door in the corner of the room. It was partially hidden behind a stack of boxes, and Ethan had to move them aside to get a better look. The door was old, with rusted hinges and a padlock that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Ethan tried to open it, but the lock held firm. He made a mental note to come back with a bolt cutter and continued his exploration of the basement. But as he turned to leave, he heard it again. The whisper. This time, it was louder, more distinct, and it sent a chill down his spine. Ethan. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice was faint, but unmistakable. It was calling his name. He turned to Finn, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs, his body tense, his eyes wide with fear. "Did you hear that, Finn?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. Finn let out a low whine in response, his tail tucked between his legs. Ethan didn't know what to do. He felt a sense of dread creeping over him, a feeling that he was not alone in the house. He quickly made his way back upstairs, Finn close behind him, and locked the basement door behind him. Chapter 3. The History. Over the next few days, Ethan tried to convince himself that the whisper was just his imagination, a product of stress and lack of sleep. But Finn's behavior only grew more erratic. He refused to eat, his once shiny coat now dull and matted. He would spend hours staring at the walls, growling softly, as if he were communicating with something unseen. Ethan knew he had to do something. He couldn't go on like this, living in a house that felt more like a prison than a home. He decided to do some research on the house, hoping to find some clue as to why Finn was acting so strangely. He started by visiting the local library, where he spent hours poring over old newspapers and property records. What he found sent a shiver down his spine. The house had a dark history. It had been built in the late 1800s by wealthy family the Hargroves. The family had lived there for decades, but tragedy struck in the 1920s when the youngest son, Thomas, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The family had searched for him for months, but he was never found. The Hargroves eventually moved away, and the house had changed hands several times over the years. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Ethan found an article from the 1950s that mentioned a series of unexplained deaths in the house. The owners had all died under mysterious circumstances, and the house had gained a reputation for being haunted. It had been vacant 4 years before Ethan bought it, and now he understood why. Ethan felt a knot of fear tighten in his stomach. He had always been a skeptic, but now he couldn't deny that something was wrong with the house. He needed to find out more, but he didn't know where to start. That night, as he lay in bed, he heard the whisper again. This time, it was louder, more insistent. "Ethan, help me." He sat up, his heart racing. The voice was coming from the basement. He knew he had to investigate, but he was terrified. He grabbed his flashlight and made his way downstairs, Finn following, close behind him. The basement was cold and dark, the air thick with the scent of mildew. Ethan shone the flashlight around the room, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. He approached the small door in the corner, his hands trembling as he tried the padlock again. This time, it clicked open, as if it had been waiting for him. He pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into the darkness. The air was even colder here, and Ethan could feel a sense of dread washing over him. He took a deep breath and descended the stairs, Finn close behind him. At the bottom of the stairs, he found a small, windowless room. The walls were lined with shelves, filled with jars of strange, unidentifiable objects. In the center of the room was a table, and on the table was a small, leather-bound book. Ethan picked up the book and opened it. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, diagrams, and symbols that he didn't recognize, but as he flipped through the pages, he realized what it was. A journal belonging to Thomas Hargrove. The journal detailed Thomas's descent into madness. He had become obsessed with the occult, convinced that he could communicate with the dead. He had performed rituals in the basement, trying to summon spirits, but something had gone wrong. The last entry was dated the day before his disappearance. "I have opened a door that cannot be closed. They are here, and they will not let me go." Help me! Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He realized that Thomas had never left the house. His spirit was still here, trapped, trying to communicate with the living. As he closed the journal, he heard the whisper again, louder this time, more desperate. Ethan. Help me. He turned to Finn, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs, his body tense, his eyes wide with fear. Ethan knew what he had to do. He had to find a way to free Thomas's spirit, to put an end to the haunting. But as he made his way back upstairs, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The house was alive, and it was not going to let him go easily. Chapter 4. The Ritual. Ethan spent the next few days researching everything he could find about the occult and spirit communication. He knew he was in over his head, but he couldn't just leave Thomas's spirit trapped in the house. He owed it to Finn, to himself, to try to set things right.
Jake arrived that evening concerned for the dog's safety. He found Max soaked to the bone, still sitting at Tommy's grave. "Come on, buddy, you've got to get inside," Jake pleaded, his voice heavy with desperation. But Max simply stared at the gravestone, his loyalty unwavering. Finally, in frustration, Jake knelt beside him and put his arms around the dog. "I get it, I really do. But you can't stay here like this. Let me help you." Max leaned into Jake, and for the first time he felt a flicker of trust. Maybe this man understood his pain. In a moment of vulnerability, Max allowed Jake to lead him away from the grave into the safety of the truck he had grown to recognize. That night, with a storm raging outside, the two of them found comfort in each other's presence. Jake sat on the truck's bed while Max lay down beside him, his head resting on Jake's leg. "You know, I've been through a lot too," Jake admitted softly, stroking Max's fur. "But we can't keep living in the past. I lost my son, and it hurt like hell, but I realized I can't let that keep me from living." As the rain poured down, filling the air with a sense of renewal, Max responded to Jake's touch, a bond forming between two lost souls, anchored by love and loss. The night grew quieter, and as Jake whispered stories into the darkness, Max listened with an open heart. Days turned into weeks, and as summer gave way to autumn, Max finally began to open up. He would still sit at Tommy's grave, but now with a sense of acceptance rather than despair. Jake continued to visit every day, bringing treats and speaking kindly. There was laughter again, small moments of joy that felt foreign after the heaviness they had both carried for so long. One sunny afternoon, Jake decided it was time to introduce Max to the world outside the cemetery. He took the dog to a nearby park, the sun bursting through the clouds, casting rays of light upon the vibrant green grass. Max felt the warmth of the sun on his back, the scent of blooming flowers wafting through the air, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of hope. At first he was hesitant, standing off to the side and watching the kids play. But when Jake threw a frisbee, urging Max to chase it, something shifted. The dog's instincts kicked in and he bounded forward, a mixture of joy and hesitation as he returned to playing. As days passed, Max started to become more active, visiting the park with Jake, discovering a new kind of happiness while still cherishing the memory of Tommy. The bond between Max and Jake grew deeper as they explored life together, filled not only with loss, but with newfound purpose. One evening, while sitting beneath their favorite oak tree in the park, Jake turned to Max, who sat contentedly with his head resting on Jake's lap. "You know," Jake said, looking out into the horizon, "I think Tommy would want us to move forward. He wouldn't want us to be sad." Max looked up, as if understanding every word. The memory of Tommy still lingered, but now it existed alongside the blossoming friendship between Jake and Max. They both had a long way to go, but they had taken the first steps toward healing the wounds that life had inflicted upon them. The seasons changed, and as winter approached, the world around Max transformed. He would still visit Tommy's grave often, laying down beside it, but he felt comforted, having Jake by his side. Together they honored Tommy's life, not with sorrow, but with memories filled with laughter and love. One snowy day, Jake brought a special treat to the cemetery, a colourful bandana that had belonged to Tommy. He placed it near the gravestone, speaking softly. This was his favourite. Think he would want you to have it? Max nudged the bandana gently, as if recognising the special connection, and his heart swelled with a mixture of grief and gratitude. Months passed, and both Max and Jake learned to navigate life's challenges together. Whenever the pain overwhelmed them, they found solace in one another's presence. In the quiet moments, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they would sit together, sharing their hopes and thoughts, each finding healing in the other's companionship. Finally, one day, as spring bloomed anew and flowers blossomed, Max lay beside Tommy's grave, feeling an overwhelming warmth. The flowers were vibrant, swaying gently in the breeze, and Max sensed that Tommy's spirit was finally at peace. In that moment, he understood that it was time to move forward, to live a life full of love, just as Tommy would have wanted. As they strolled through the park, Jake looked down at Max. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" With a bright, spring sun overhead, Max let out a joyful bark, eyes sparkling with renewed energy. Together, they ran through the grassy fields, a celebration of life, love, and memories that would never fade. In the end, Max had learned that love knows no boundaries. Even through loss, bonds exist that can help navigate the path ahead, guiding them toward a new beginning built on the foundation of cherished memories. And as the seasons turned in a beautiful cycle, both Max and Jake found relief from their sorrows, comforted by the realization that those they loved would always remain alive in their hearts. If this heartwarming story touched your heart, please give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more incredible stories about love, loyalty, and the bonds that tie us together. We want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment of unwavering loyalty like this? Share your story in the comments below.